Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies. And this is Building Happiness by the Supreme Secretary of AMORC. An article taken from Rosicrucian Digest, Volume 9, Number 3, April 1931. Building Happiness by the Supreme Secretary of AMORC. It is a peculiarity of man to seek beyond the realm of his own immediate being, that which he most needs. Of the vast enterprises attributed to man, as they have become recorded in the annals of the past, we find that regardless of varied motives and actuating impulses, there was one ultimate aim back of all: the achievement of happiness. In the continued clamor for happiness, whether by a race, a nation, or an individual, the end most sought for seemed to justify the means. The annihilation of moral sense, the utter disregard of divinity, the degeneration of the standards of society, cowardice, perjury, treason, murder, deceit, all of these were entertained if they but led the way to happiness. Happiness, it has become evident, is that famed but elusive reward at the end of the rainbow. The difficulty in obtaining happiness in the instance of the average seeker for the same lies in his inability to clearly define in his own mind just what happiness really is. It is commonly difficult for the one who would move heaven and earth to acquire that thing or state he terms happiness, to logically explain how it would result in happiness after it was obtained. Without the attempt to become pedagogical, let us first frankly and impartially analyze happiness, shelving, so to speak, our personal concept for the moment, as the human being a right to demand happiness, that is, command it as an attitude of life itself, something which should be a psychic part of his being like unto his instincts, emotions, and desires. Is happiness but the blessing of the God of fortune and circumstance? Is it but a mathematically conferred honor upon a percent of every 1,000 according to some mysterious law of nature unknown to mankind? Ponder upon these three questions, for in the final analysis of them, we take our first forward step towards real and lasting happiness. Man, as far as his birth here on this plane is concerned, is not the direct result of his own thinking or doing, but rather the fulfillment of well-established and decreed natural laws. Man is a living manifestation of the immutability and perfection of cosmic principles. Any existent imperfection in man at birth, mentally or physically, is not an indication of irregularity or exception in the divine laws of life, but rather a willful disobedience of or interference with them on the part of man. Therefore, if we are to assume any standard as a basis to work upon, we accept the divine principles of creation as the acme of perfection. We agree, then, that if ignorance or willful abuse on the part of mankind did not disturb the natural harmony and balance of the laws of life, man would be as perfect physically and mentally as the directing intelligence of which he is the result. Reasoning deductively, it would, therefore, appear that the normal state of man should be one of perfection, that physically he should be such that the blood, tissue, bone, muscles, organs, and members that compose his physical self should be working in such perfect relation and should perform their special purposes so adequately that there would be no resulting discord or ill health. Mentally, therefore, man should be alert, keen, intelligent, and quite capable of coordinating all of his faculties, as to be able to direct his body properly for his own well-being and preservation. If you and I could constantly maintain such a condition in ourselves as long as we are granted the privilege of life on this plane, would that not constitute a form of happiness? To the point, aside from the superfluities of life, if we can maintain perfect health with its natural advantages and have the use of a well-developed intelligence with its resulting advantages, that would be a prime factor, at least, towards happiness. Would it not? What is the result of this reasoning? It is just this. that happiness is not a favored condition. It is not a special blessing, nor is it a condition that should be endowed on a certain percentage according to the law of averages. But happiness should be a normal condition like unto health and sanity. It is a condition that should be the result of normalcy in the mind and body. It is an attribute of life, therefore, and man has a right to demand it. Not only that, but when it does not exist, it is because of the lack of some fundamental, either within the physical, mental, or psychic selves of man. Let us rest at this point with two laws established in our analysis. First, happiness is the result of normalcy in man, physically, mentally, and psychically. Second, as happiness is an attribute of life itself, it is man's bound right and he may demand it. Proceeding further, let us analyze the nature of this condition termed happiness, working on the premise that one is in the state of normacy mentioned above and is quite capable of maintaining it, and is therefore a process of happiness. Just what is this happiness? Popularly, it is conceived to be a pleasurable or joyous state, but true happiness continues without the effort on the part of man to attain it. Happiness is not a condition in and by itself, which we must seek, but rather the pleasurable influence of not doing certain things. Keep always in mind our first law. Happiness is the result of normacy in man. It is the harmonious sensation of the perfect balance of man himself. If we add to ourselves something that is needed that we haven't the materials for, we follow the path in this erroneous thinking that millions have tramped towards the end of the rainbow, which always keeps just ahead of them. Unhappiness is the indication not of the lack of something that must be sought for, but rather the adjustment of something that we already have inherently, but have failed to build rightly. We are often disillusioned by the belief that at last we have found happiness, as if it were something to be sought, by the fact that we do receive through impressions of our senses a gratification of what we desire. Such pleasure, such a state of enjoyment is not happiness in the true sense. It is merely the gratification of the demands of the physical or mental self. Such happiness is transitory, relative, and leaves us groping, searching again when it deserts us. To the starving or thirst-crazed man, the sublimity of the monetary satisfaction when fed or given drink is the pinnacle of human happiness. The warmth of fire to the cold, the fantasies of the poisoned brain of the drug addict. These are mere gratifications which, when regularly followed, lose their enthralling sense of elevation and pleasure, and compel one to seek elsewhere or indulge in excesses which are ruinous, in the attempt to attain false happiness. True happiness neither changes in its appeal or its nature. True happiness is not out beyond, something to be hunted and ferreted out of life and the world we are in. We now have two more laws for the building of happiness. They are, first, happiness is not the gratification of the senses, but a rhythmic harmony among the outer, mental, and psychic selves. Second, happiness, therefore, must constitute the adjustment of man himself, and in man, not to be sought elsewhere. In conclusion, let us consider the building of happiness. Now that we have some laws or materials to work with, it is not reasonable to say that man himself must do his own building of happiness. We have found the characteristics necessary for happiness, and the continuance of it are inherent in man as a being, taking into consideration all phases of man, the physical, the mental, and the psychic. Permanent happiness cannot be brought to you by others. It is true, others can contribute to our relative happiness, companionship, the study of art, music, the sciences, sports, literature, whatever our desires may be. The fulfillment of them gives momentary pleasure, but when finally gratified, fades away and fails to satisfy. If you long for happiness, long not for others to give it to you or create it for you. Such happiness without the knowledge by you of how it was accomplished would be useless to you, because when the one who is creating it for you ceases, the false happiness ceases also. The most that others can do for you is to show you how to build happiness into your own life. The law of self-dependence and preservation applies to happiness also. Stop caring for your outer physical body. Neglect it, abuse it, and what are the results? Disease, suffering, and pain, even death. These consequences instinctively compel us to be cautious, always mindful of the best interest of the body. So it is with happiness. Stop doing that which is necessary to build your own happiness, and the result is sorrow and grief. No matter where you seek or whom you ask to give you happiness, if you do not build it yourself or neglect what you have built in the way of happiness in your life, it will desert you. Since according to the laws brought out in this analysis, happiness depends upon normacy of body, mind, and psychic self. Make the best of what you actually are. Improve your body. Regard sane and rational instructions for perfecting the health. Heed the dictates of your conscious and inner self, and attempt to make up the deficiencies that might exist in your own physical self. Make the physical self normal, then develop the mind. Purge it of destructive thoughts, as those kind of thoughts leave their effect on the mind. Use your mental powers for constructive, creative work. Be broad, tolerant, cast out biases and intolerance. Give your mental self a chance to expand, to broaden out, to at least function normally in every way. Follow the direction of the so-called urges, hunches, or intuition. Allow the cosmic and divine intelligence, the soul force in you, an opportunity to help. Do not be an egotist and attempt to stifle the words of God as they ring in your consciousness. The second law we have found is, you have the right to happiness. Demand it. Prevent interference in the perfection of yourself. Permit no other to persuade you to disregard your rightful heritage of happiness. Enter into no relationship of any sort that will bind you or prevent you from acting and thinking for your own interest or unselfish happiness. And our third law, we must constantly see that the balance and rhyme of our physical, mental, and psychic selves is not upset. We must not, in the pursuits of our daily lives, neglect one at the sacrifice of the other. In attainment of health, for example, if we neglect the mental or psychic side, we merely build one wall of the structure of happiness and leave the others in ruins. To have balance, we must have equality. Common sense and proper thinking will assist us in maintaining the rhyme necessary among the three. Finally, our fourth law, seek not happiness elsewhere but in man. Since happiness is of man, it is in him. The world of happiness lies within man. The further man projects his thoughts from himself in search of happiness, the further away he gets from happiness. The world at large may be for man, but the source of happiness is always of and within man. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.